Another series for top juniors is History Around You, which is designed to help 8 to 11-year-olds gain a greater awareness of their heritage, using evidence that is still visible today. After all, we are surrounded by historical evidence in our everyday lives. Things like buildings or signposts and letterboxes, or even books and papers, can tell us something about life in earlier times. And History Around You aims to encourage children to go out and look for this sort of historical evidence in their own localities. So let's take a look now at the first programme in the series, which is called Hunting for Clues.
Hello, I'm at Goodison Park watching Everton play Burnley. You're probably wondering what all this has got to do with history. Well, history isn't just about old buildings like castles or churches. There's history in a name, like Everton's nickname, the Toffees. Or history in a custom, like the toffee lady throwing sweets to the crowd. The toffee lady comes round like this before every match at Everton. There's even history in a badge, like Everton's badge. It shows a round building with a pointed roof and what looks like a window with bars. That building's not far from here. It stands on its own with a fence round it. What do you think it is? I can't see the window from here, but perhaps it's round the other side. In fact, nowadays there's no longer a window in the building, but here's a clue. If you look carefully at these stones, you'll see where there was once a window before it was filled in. It's an odd-looking building, isn't it? Now let's have a look inside. Looks to me a bit like a dungeon. In fact, it is a kind of dungeon. If you lived in Everton 200 years ago and you were a troublemaker, this is where they'd put you. And they'd keep you here all night till they brought you before the magistrates next morning. It's not a very big place. In fact, I can almost touch the walls. And I certainly wouldn't like to spend the night in here. I wonder how many Everton supporters know that their badge is the old village lockup or jail. It's not changed very much, as you can see from this old picture. In a cottage near here, toffee was made that became famous as Everton toffee. That's why the Everton football team is nicknamed the Toffees. Here's an old picture of Mother Noblet, one of the old toffee sellers. Look at her hat, her basket, and umbrella. Now have a look again at the toffee lady. She's dressed just to look like Mother Noblet, though I think she's a lot prettier. They still make toffee in Everton, but the famous toffee is now made in a factory. Here's the toffee, all soft and sticky. And here are the stripes of black and white mint. The toffee's wrapped in the layer of black and white mint. This is how the modern Everton toffees are made. Today, machines do most of the work. Everton overlooks the River Mersey. Like other parts of Liverpool, it's being rebuilt. But in spite of the work of bulldozers, there are still plenty of clues about to show what Everton was like in the past when it was a little village surrounded by fields. This was before it became part of Liverpool. The village has gone, but near where the headless cross once stood, today there's a street sign which reminds us that once there was a village here. It's beside Parkland, where the old village green used to be. In this old picture of Everton village, you can see St George's Church high up on the hill. Today, it's still there, but now it's surrounded by high flats. It looks just an ordinary church from the outside, but inside it's very unusual. I'm inside St George's Church. Look what happens to this magnet. This pillar isn't made of stone, it's made of iron. In fact, this church is one of the earliest buildings in England in which cast iron was used. The ceiling has an iron frame. The windows have iron frames. Look at this big circle in the window. The same big circular pattern is also on the ceiling. And look at the small windows. They are the same as the small parts in the big window. It's all made to fit together like a construction kit. But it's outside in the churchyard where most of the clues are. Can you guess what these boys are doing? They're crayoning on paper over the writing on gravestones so that they can read them more easily and keep them as records of the past. The writing tells you what people in Everton did in the past. Here's the grave of a merchant who might have sold sugar or cotton brought to Liverpool from the West Indies or America. This is the grave of a seaman, a mariner, who'd have worked on one of the ships sailing from Merseyside. And here's another clue to the past. Look at this boy's badge. It shows a beacon, which was a big fire usually lit on a hilltop to warn people of danger. His school's near this church where the old beacon once stood. A nearby street sign gives us another clue to this. Today, there are lots of modern council flats and council houses in Everton, but you can still see the kinds of houses that were built long ago. These houses would once have been the houses of rich merchants. They're big houses, and you can see that the people who lived in these houses were rich because they could afford to have the houses made fancy with balconies and pillars. Look at the pillars. They don't hold up the doorway, they're just for decoration. Down here is the servants' entrance, not at all fancy. But look at the balcony. You can't sit out on that, it's just for decoration. It's made of cast iron, and you can see it has a very fancy pattern on it. Outside the doorway of a big house like this, you usually find a round cast iron cover. It's a coal hole cover, and the coalman would tip coal down here to the coal hole underneath for the servants to make up the fires with. Some are still in use today. Now, what do you think this was used for? Well, the streets of Everton weren't swept as regularly as they are today, and outside the old houses, you can still find iron bars like this one. It's a foot scraper, and you used it like this to take off the mud from your feet before going into the house. These small houses were built for the workers who came to find work in Everton over 100 years ago. The chimneys show how crowded together the houses are. Today, many of the lavatories are still outside in the small backyards. You can find lots of clues about what Everton was like in the past along the pavement and in the road. This is an old drinking fountain. Like many things in Everton, it's made of cast iron. It doesn't work now, but it had a handle here, and when you turned it, the water came out of here, and you drank like this. Here's an old picture of one, and this one's got a metal cup. The whole of Everton used to be lit by gas. This is an old lamp standard. It uses electricity now, but once it was lit by gas. It's got two arms for the workman to rest his ladder on when mending the lamp. It's very fancy, isn't it? This is the usual kind of gas lamp. It's not as big or as fancy as the one you've just seen, but it's still got the two arms for the ladder. A few gas lamps are still in use in some parts of the country, even today. Let's see what other clues we can find. This is a post box, but it's a special one. What's special about it? Well, look at the crown on top. These post boxes were made in Liverpool about 100 years ago. The slit for the letters slopes downwards, which was a bit unfortunate because it let the rain in and all the letters got wet. They didn't make many of these, and one reason was the hinge. You can see it's on the outside, and it was too easy for criminals to force them open and get at the contents of the box. This box is a later one. You can see that the hinges are on the inside so that it's harder to break in. For some reason, they made these without a name on them. So they're called nameless or anonymous post boxes. People didn't like the nameless post boxes, and you can see that this has been made with a name. Post Office. And the slit here slopes upwards so that the rain doesn't get in. And down here you can see the initials of Queen Victoria, who was Queen when this post box was made. V for Victoria, and R, which stands for Regina, the Latin for Queen. This one has King Edward VII's initials on it. It's a bit difficult to work out, so I'm tracing it for you. You can often tell how old an area is by looking at the post boxes and finding out when the king or queen lived. Here are George V's initials. And here are his sons, George VI. And here are the present queens, Elizabeth II. Now let's look at a big clue. That big building over there, rising above the houses. What do you think it is? It looks big enough for a castle, but this part looks more like a church. Well, it's a huge water tower. Before it was built over 100 years ago, lots of people in Everton wouldn't have been able to have water piped to their homes. And this very big wall, which looks like a castle wall, was built round the underground reservoir, the big tank where the water is stored. Of course, you don't have to live in Everton to find all these sorts of clues. You can find them anywhere, if you look. See how many clues you can find where you live.